The metaphor between the mat and life is you get up and try. And if it doesn't work out, it's not catastrophic. You need to perpetually change. You can't just stay the same. Not being stuck in your old ways, but giving yourself permission to fail. That's the beautiful thing about it. I think it's unique. Jiu-Jitsu is unique in that respect.
Well, welcome once again to the Audacious Faith Podcast. This is episode 92. We are on location today, as you can see, here in East Los Angeles, California, at the East LA Jiu Jitsu studio. And Ron Mukai is actually the founder of that.
Hi, guys.
And I got to meet him just probably about a month ago, saw a demonstration of what they do here. They're doing something fantastic here in East Los Angeles and soon to be expanding, which we're going to talk about today as well. So I'm so excited to have you here with us as we have you here on the podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I want to get right into it because you're doing some great things here. And we're at your studio right now, and you're teaching jiu-jitsu to, am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay, to children, also adults.
Yes.
And I know that you do this as a nonprofit here in this area, and you're reaching a lot of people. So kind of maybe give us a little bit of background. Where did that come from? Where was the vision for that? How did that start? And how did you kind of get into this?
Okay, so I'm 54 years old. I started jiu-jitsu when I was 39, and my 5-year-old had high energy.
Yeah.
And so somebody says, try jiu-jitsu. So we take him to a school. He loves it. I'm sitting on the bench. Somebody says, oh, you should try it too. Mm-hmm. I was probably about 30, 40 pounds heavier than I am now.
Okay.
And I said, I'm kind of old. I'm 39. They said, no, you should try it. It's like chess with your body. Tried it one time, and I was hooked. I pretty much went 5-6 days a week from that point forward. And what I liked about it the most, it wasn't even the exercise. It was the mental reprieve. I think for me, like most folks, you're so in your own mind that you're either living in the past or living in the future with regret or fear.
Sure.
And you can never really be present. And what I liked about it when I was on the mat is you're just trying to survive. So you're not thinking about anything else.
Okay.
And the ability to go do something one time a day where you're not thinking about all your problems.
Right. Okay.
It was a game changer for me.
So it sounds like it's a real exercise in focus.
Absolutely. Because you're in that moment and you have to deal with whatever's coming at you at that moment. Mm-hmm. And then let's say you lose. Then 45 seconds later, the next match starts. And you can't sit there and dwell on your loss. You have to shake it off and go do it again. And for me, I was like most folks, I was a chronic overthinker. Okay. And I couldn't really escape my mind. I'd have to go skiing or surfing or go travel somewhere to kind of get out of my life. Okay. But you can't go skiing or surfing or travel to Europe every day.
True.
So most days I was just kind of getting through the day because my mind was going crazy.
So then it launched into where you're doing a nonprofit here, kind of got that vision. What kind of got you thinking that way?
So I started jiu-jitsu in 2009. 2016, I opened up a for-profit school in Fullerton called Ethos Jiu-Jitsu. Okay. And through that process, I realized the jiu-jitsu community, it's a very strong community with a very strong culture. Sometimes more strong than church, because it's built on honesty. And sadly, sometimes the church isn't built on honesty.
True.
You know, when you're fighting people, you really see who they are at their most vulnerable moments in life, at their worst moments. Mm-hmm. And because you interact on that level, the friendship's built on honesty. Mm-hmm. And you let each other into your lives. You share life together because nobody comes to jiu-jitsu once a week. They come 3-4 times a week.
Okay.
So when I realized the community that was happening there and how we were just sharing our lives, all aspects of our lives, including faith, I said, oh, this would be a great, focus on doing it nonprofit. Now, when I say we're a jiu-jitsu school, we're not a ministry. We're a jiu-jitsu school, we're not a church.
Right.
But the process of doing life with folks, where you're opening up to them, they're opening up to you, you're sharing life, it's a great basis for ministry because You talk about your lives, and they're curious about your life. They're curious about your faith.
Mm-hmm.
They respect you because they see you in all aspects of life.
Sure.
And then you just go from there. So it's been awesome.
So you're mentioning faith. I know you're a strong person of faith. How long have you been a person of faith? Most of your life? Or?
College.
Okay.
So I didn't grow up in a Christian home.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who's still my pastor now, I met him in high school, and I worked for him in high school. He ran a surf shop. So I was an employee in a surf shop, went away to college, got saved in college. But then it's just been a long, gradual road of sort of trusting in God more and relinquishing more to God. So it wasn't those moments, even though I got saved in a certain moment, I think it took me decades to mature in my faith to the point where I wasn't just trying to do all these great things to please God.
Sure. Sure. So tying that all in, and then that's kind of probably, you're talking about the community and how it was building the community. So your vision now for East LA, I mean, why here? Is there a particular reason for that?
So I was born in East LA. My parents were from East LA. And I built some commercial properties in the 90s and the early 2000s. And the community really came around me and supported me. And if you know anything about the unincorporated county of Los Angeles, East LA is unincorporated county of Los Angeles.
Okay.
That's why historically it's lacked a lot of services, it's lacked representative government, because you don't have a mayor, you don't have a city council, you don't have a city manager. Everybody's just kind of fending for themselves in the big county. Okay. And the community really came out and supported me when I needed them, and I never forgot that. And it was, so even when I started Jiu Jitsu, I purposed in my heart that I wanted to come back and teach Jiu Jitsu in East LA. It resurfaced during the pandemic because I was in a store up the street, and I realized the community was just gripped by fear. And, you know, everybody always talks about a lot of things, but I was just under the conviction that I actually had to do something. So I consulted with some friends, and one of my friends really challenged me because I was going to raise money and then start the nonprofit. And he says, if this is a venture of faith, where's your faith? So I said, you know what, you're right. So my friend had turned me onto this location, who's a real estate broker, and I came down, I put the deposit down, and I opened a DBA, and I signed the lease. And then from there, God really met us. From getting the construction taken care of to every system coming together, it was awesome. But it was recognizing that Jiu-Jitsu builds character, and that what the youth in East LA needed was character. Because if you understand who you are vis-a-vis God, meaning faith, you're not going to be scared of everything. And you're going to be able to tackle the pandemic. You're going to be able to tackle adolescence, all these other issues that are plaguing the youth today. So that's why I did it.
Right. Got it. So I know that you mentioned that often there's more honesty in something like this than even in the church, where the walls are often up. You're within the walls of a building, but the walls are up around people because you're supposed to be a certain way, or you're supposed to, follow certain standards and everything. So would you say that this is giving you the opportunity to live faith amongst people and in front of people way more than if you just stayed within the walls of a ministry of a church?
Excuse me, absolutely. A couple of things. One is, if it's relationship to Christ, like what I always tell my kids, as long as it honors God, go big, don't worry about what everybody else thinks. Unfortunately, and I don't say this as a rip on church, I'm very involved in my church.
Sure.
So I'm not anti-church. But many times the pitfalls of church are, we want people to perceive us a certain way, or we take our identity in being better than other people.
Okay.
So that's religion. That's what Jesus came to fight against, right?
Sure.
And so in church, where some people take identity in being better than other people, that's where you get religion, that's where you get a lot of judgment. That's the first point. In Jiu Jitsu, because everybody's basically in here struggling, everybody is failing, You win or you lose. And very rarely does everybody always win.
Right.
It's not, you can't take your identity on who you are vis-a-vis other people because you're constantly getting humbled in a very real physical sense, you know? And even though in life you get humbled by God or you get humbled by your circumstances, it's not as literal as getting choked by somebody, 6-7 times a night. So that literal physical humility really goes a long way in breeding honesty in the relationship. The second point is when nobody likes to be treated like a project. If you think of yourself, when you've hung out with people that have some agenda for you, whether it's something they need from you or they're trying to fix you, a normal person can smell that a mile away, and you don't really want to hang out with somebody because it's not a real relationship. It's a project. Right. You're a project. But what I realized when I just looked back at my own life, and I don't say this proudly, I say this kind of shamefully, is all the people that I've known over the years, and I've treated them like a project. Whether it was their marriage was broken and needed fixing, or they need to get saved, and my relationship wasn't genuine love and concern. It was, I need to hang out with this person for this agenda.
Gotcha.
And when I realized in a jiu-jitsu school, you're hanging out with people from all different walks of life, it'd be exhausting to have this agenda or project-based relationship with everybody in the gym. So you kind of just let that go, and you're just friends with everybody.
Right.
You accept them as they are, while wanting the best for them, while wanting them to get better, which is really what true friendship is, right? And when you do that, it's reciprocated. People see that you just like them for them, that you want to help them, that it's this agape love, this selfless love.
Right.
And that's attractive to them. So,
yeah.
And it's interesting that I find that out in my 40s, right? After you live so much life and you realize how much expectation you put on these other people, and they feel it.
Sure. No, what you're actually talking about, we just did an episode just a few episodes ago that's called Why I Don't Like Church. And just like you, I'm a very, obviously I'm a pastor, very strong in the church, but there's so many things about church and how it's done that I don't like. Not because the church was wrong, but because of what we've made it to be.
Sure.
And so I totally see what you're saying. Now let's touch on something that you're mentioning. You mentioned being choked 6-7 times a night. Yeah, most people are going to hear that going, what? I'm sure that didn't, pass the ears of some people that were listening to this right now. And we're in an age right now where mental toughness seems to be shrinking, right? Where anything that's hard, anything where you lose, let's just give a trophy to everyone, you know how it goes.
Sure.
And people are just becoming softer and softer. Obviously, that's not what you do here, right? So
yes.
So how have you seen the decline of that? And how do you address that problem? And why do you see the value in addressing that problem?
Well, I think, here's what I always tell parents. I said, if you think of the moments in life where you've grown the most as a person, it's through adversity. It's through tough times.
Yes.
Where you value your spouse more because you see that she's stuck by you. You see who your good friends are. You see who your friends are not. It's through adversity. But especially in America, we're never without food. We're never without shelter. We're never without basic living expenses,
right,
and even luxuries. So you never really experience hardship, usually until there's some catastrophic event like a divorce or a catastrophic health issue or a loved one dies. Okay. But you can pretty much stay insulated from hardship. So in this age where people shy away from hardship, the great thing about jiu-jitsu is from day one, it's hard and it never gets easier. And so what you have to do to last in jiu-jitsu is you have to recognize a couple things. Losing doesn't make you a loser.
Okay.
When you lose, you're learning something. If you have this really dogmatic way of thinking, but it's not the most efficient way of thinking, you have to shed those ways of thinking that aren't necessarily working for you. Imagine that works for an adult. Most adults, when they get in their 20s, they never try anything new. They have the same friends, they eat the same food, they do the same thing on the same night of the week. It's just routine. They never really challenge themselves, and they never fail because people would make fun of you, they'd laugh at you. What jiu-jitsu is you're trying a brand new skill that you're not good at, and every day you come in and try something new, and you fail. So what that does to a person is it helps them understand, you think everybody's thinking of you, they're not. You think that everything catastrophic is going to happen if you don't succeed. It doesn't. So what that does for the rest of your life is it helps you go bigger in your relationships, in your walk with the Lord. Because what is our walk with the Lord? It's surrender to God, right? We're practicing our faith.
Right.
We don't perfect our faith. I guess when we're dead, we'll perfect our faith. But as we're living, we're saved by grace, and we go and we try. And then when we don't succeed, we ask for forgiveness, and we get up and we go do it again.
Right.
Right? Or we try some other iteration of it. So I think the metaphor between the mat and life is it helps people understand. So there's two competing things. One is you get up and try, and if it doesn't work out, it's not catastrophic. The other, though, is you need to perpetually change. You can't just stay the same.
Sure.
So it's this great exercise in trying new things, not being stuck in your old ways, but giving yourself permission to fail. That's the beautiful thing about it. I think it's unique. Jiu-jitsu is unique in that respect.
So I'm thinking, as you're mentioning this, I'm thinking of in James 1 where it's saying, consider it joy when you fall into trials and difficult times. And it's more of the fact that of what you know it's going to produce.
Yeah, the testing of your faith produces patience.
Right. You're going to get stronger. I mean, let's face it. I mean, even if you're working out and everything, if you don't put yourself under any weight, you're not going to get any stronger, right? It's got to be something that breaks you down.
Correct.
So, but most people don't look at it that way. Now, I know that when we were here, we brought some school kids here and you did a demonstration. And one thing that you mentioned several times is, hey, try something that's hard. You know, just go and try something that's hard. And that is the total opposite of what most of them are hearing today. It's like, if it's hard, I don't want to do it. If I'm going to fail, I don't want to do it. So that's what you're kind of breaking down. And what are some of the results that you see on some of the young people you deal with, especially, but even adults? How do they start to change when they start breaking down that mindset?
So this whole fear of judgment or fear of not succeeding, I think people's phones and social media have really poisoned them.
Okay.
Because, and I think I shared a quote with you that day, which is comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
And I really think what's happening to youth and adults is they sit on their phone and they compare themselves to everybody on TikTok, everybody on Instagram. And they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not athletic enough. And so they're condemned to the life that they have because they don't have all these other things that everybody else has. And so because they fundamentally lack self-confidence because they're comparing themselves against things that aren't even real. And then you have this artificial world where people you don't know and don't care about you have the right and the place to comment in your life, which they shouldn't have. So those two factors working together, this comparing yourself to everybody else and strangers basically commenting into your life, they reduce you to this insecure person that can't do anything.
Yeah.
The question you asked me was, how do I see the mat jiu-jitsu changing who they are? One is they can't have their phone on the mat. So they're squarely living in reality. They're living in the present. And what jiu-jitsu does for somebody who is overly confident, thinks they're the man, firstborn child, and they're the golden kid, and everything, happens because at their word, everything happens.
Right.
They get, 10-year-old boy comes on the mat and gets choked out by an 8-year-old girl. He's not the man anymore. She is. He has to deal with that reality.
Right.
And that process, without any lecture, humbles him. because he had to deal with the reality that he is not who he thought he was.
Okay.
Now, on the other side, if you take a 11-year-old girl who's maybe 20 pounds overweight, slumped shoulders, low self-esteem, doesn't really talk much. You put her on the mat, and after 3 or 4 months, she is not the fastest person on the mat, but she's using what God gave her, because usually kids that aren't real physical have to use their brains more, and so their problem-solving skills kick in, and she's winning some matches. What that does to her, again, without lecture, she now sees success in a physical sport, and what that translates to is real self-confidence, because I don't think I can do this. I know I can do it because I just did it. I just dominated this athletic girl, and I'm not athletic.
Okay.
So what it does, the process of jiu-jitsu, it humbles the people that need humbling and builds up the people that need their self-esteem built up. And it's all done in a very natural way without judgment. We don't sit around and make fun of the overconfident kid for getting beat, and we don't overly glory in the gal that's overcome this. It's like, hey, good job, and we move on to the next thing. So again, we're teaching them to live in the moment. So that process over time, it kind of, everybody's human. If everybody's honest, they're always going to be a little self-conscious. They're always going to be a little concerned with what other people think about them.
Sure.
But it's done in a very real way, where now it's not this phobia that prohibits you from living your life or doing the next thing. You know, a good example is I have kids here. They're afraid to take off their shoes because they don't want anybody to see their feet. Okay. They won't take their socks off.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's a perfect example of a made-up fear in their mind, but it paralyzes them.
Yeah.
I've had kids come. They come for 2-3 days. They'll sit on the sidelines because they won't take their socks off.
Okay.
Then when they realize nobody really cares, you know, it's just this one small step to getting out of your own head.
Sure.
And from dealing with kids and adults for the past 14 years, most people are way too much in their own head. Even believers. Believers, it's the fear of man. And the other thing they do is they separate. There's 2 categories in their mind. Things that God can do and things that God can't do. God can save me from cancer if I pray, but God can't fix my marriage. You see what I'm saying?
You would think the other one would be easier than the
Well, you think when catastrophic things come, everybody turns to God.
Right.
Because now you're not in control. You need to turn to God, because who else can save you from cancer?
Right.
But then you'll see somebody that's been in the church for decades and their marriage is not really good. And instead they want to go and be the head usher at church, or they want to go and be so-and-so.
Right.
Because they can't handle the fact of going home when they've lost the respect of their spouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something that's insurmountable.
Sure.
Which is interesting.
Very, very much so. So as you're working with the youth especially, are there certain things that you're seeing stand out that seem to be some of the biggest problems? You mentioned one of them, which was self-esteem and all of that. Is that the major one? Are there some others that stick out as well?
I think settling for mediocrity. And again, when I talk about, I think a big part has to do with the parents.
Yeah.
But I'm not throwing rocks at parents. You know, I always say jokingly, I was an expert at kids until I had kids, and I was an expert at teenagers until I had teenagers.
Yeah. Same.
Now I'm not an expert at anything.
Right.
But the one thing I can say is, I'll give you an analogy. We tell our sons and daughters, don't go sleep around, don't go doing whatever, save yourself. Tell my son, save yourself for the woman that God has for you, so you can get married to this Christian woman and have this great Christian marriage. But if my wife and I don't have this great Christian marriage, if we don't love each other deeply, if we don't enjoy each other's friendship and companionship and intimacy and all that, and we're telling our kids, save yourself for what we got.
Right.
Sadly, most people are like, if that's what I'm saving myself for, I don't want that, because it's mediocre at best.
Okay.
And that bleeds over into careers, that bleeds over into relationships, that bleeds over just into your overall life. And I'm not saying bigger is better. You can live a very small life, investing in a small number of people and have a very high quality life. And God is not going to think any less of you.
Yeah.
But somebody who's surrendered to the Lord, that has a look to it. And somebody who's not, that has a look to it. And I think a lot of times in the church, I see the problem with the youth is the parents say, model me, but the parents are modeling mediocrity. The parents are modeling half in, half out.
Yeah.
Weak faith, not audacious faith,
Right.
weak faith, or very calculated faith. They always have a plan B unless God doesn't deliver, in case God doesn't deliver. And so one of the problems that I see in the kids, let's talk about the church first, is I see that we're telling our youth to model us, but it's the adults that need to step up and live this life of audacious faith.
Right.
You know, and how do you teach that in a book? Or it's somebody has to make the decision to surrender on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis to Christ, and really take the time to figure out who they are and who God is, and then surrender to God's plan for your life. So that's one thing. And the second thing, now I'll talk about the non-church folks. Besides chronic insecurity, and the same thing, having no real role models, they don't understand who they are. If you don't understand who you are and you just start doing stuff, you know, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a rodeo clown, I want to be an astronaut. You first have to be a fireman, you have to enjoy helping people. You have to be a hard worker. You have to be honest. You have to be a person of integrity. Yeah. I think so many times on TikTok or, you know, these social media sites, it's what everybody's doing. But there's no emphasis on who you are. So what I tell young people, if you don't know what you want to do, it's okay. But practice, just like you practice Jiu Jitsu, practice being a person of integrity. Practice showing up every day, whether you feel like it or not being run by your emotions. Yeah. On a side note, one of the great things about Jiu Jitsu is you're in a highly emotional situation, which is a fight, and you have to make a conscious decision to control your emotions in a fight, so you have a better outcome. That's life, right?
Yeah.
You're married, your wife says something, you're 100% right, she's 100% wrong. You want to say something. Wisdom is you don't say anything. You give it to the Lord, you calm down, you go eat an ice cream sandwich, and right, you let it go.
Right.
But if you act emotionally, it doesn't go your way.
Sure.
That's what. So this process of kids learning that it's not necessarily what you do, it's who you are, and you practice these traits. You practice hard work, you practice honesty, you practice integrity, and then you have people come alongside you like the black belts on the mat that know more than you, and you yield to their instruction.
Okay.
In this day and age, everybody's an expert. People mistake information for wisdom.
Sure.
Everybody has a lot of information, but nobody has wisdom.
Yeah.
So that's my long answer to that, I guess.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more now. You got the vision for the nonprofit here in this area. So how does that translate? How does that work? You've got a kid who's thinking, you know, the family's thinking, oh, I'd like to have my child do this, but I don't know how expensive it is. You know, I don't know if it's something that we could really afford. How does that, in the vision you kind of laid out earlier, God said, just do it, you know, and he would make the way. So how does that work if someone came to you?
So my vision, one thing is I want every kid in East LA to train Jiu-Jitsu. Every kid on the East Side to train Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to where they're at. I'm going to go to the schools. I'm going to go to the parks. I'm going to go through other nonprofits to get them to try this for the character building aspects. Say the second part of that question again.
So how would it work? Let's say they're thinking they can't. afford it.
So my second goal is I want this nonprofit to help generations of people. 50 years from now, when I'm dead and gone, I want somebody to be like, oh, my cousin trains there, my kids train there. So they come in and we have a simple conversation with them. They fill out a short form and basically they pay what they can afford. Because I think that when you just offer everything for free, it robs people of their dignity.
Sure.
They're not stakeholders in it. So some people pay full price, some people pay zero.
Right.
And everywhere in between. But it's not commoditized. And by what they fill out on the form, sometimes we don't even offer them the paid version. We just say, oh, you know what? Your kids can train for free.
Okay.
So I spare them the indignity of them having to tell us that they can't afford it.
Okay.
And then we have a program for the gis, the outfits, where our friends donate gently used gis.
Okay.
And again, we can read the situation. We can give them a used gi for free that basically it's theirs.
Right.
Or if they want to buy a gi, they can buy a gi. So what I like about it is a family can come in with 3 kids and for no money, they can start immediately training. So there's really no barrier to entry.
Right. Because isn't it true that simple, small barriers keep people from doing great things in life?
Correct.
Over and over again. Right.
And I think what happens is whether it's the language barrier or they don't want to be embarrassed because they can't afford it.
Right.
You know, I have one kid here, he and his mom and dad and 2 siblings live in a motel and they don't have a car. So he was introduced to our school through this middle school program that we do where we teach jiu-jitsu in the middle school. And he went home and told his dad, I want to do jiu-jitsu. And his dad immediately said, no, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. He says, no, you don't understand. They're going to work with us. So after the son reassured him, then they came in and signed up.
Nice. Okay.
So it's those kind of things.
So basically, as God allows you to, you want to basically reach everybody. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Right. And everyone has value. You were saying it's not about a notch in a belt or anything like that. It's that you're going to care just as God loved the world and gave for everybody. You're going to do for everybody.
Well, I look at it like this. It's my pastor uses the term patient evangelism. If you do life with people, they will come to know you, like you, and trust you. And when they know you and like you and trust you, they will ask about your life. And if you're a person of faith, faith plays a prominent role in your life.
Right.
So I think that when you take that approach, that you just want to be in relationship with people, then all those things will take place.
Absolutely.
In God's timing, you know. And sometimes, I was just talking to one of my instructors about this today. I said, when you come on that mat, if everybody in that room knows that you're there for them, you're their biggest fan and you want them to succeed, jiu-jitsu is merely the vehicle.
Got that.
But if they know that you are there for them and you want them to succeed, that just has a look to it and it's attractive. So I think jiu-jitsu is merely the vehicle.
Yes.
It's the relationship that's important.
Gotcha. Now let's talk about this because you said you started later in life. Your wife also does this and is very good at it as well, right?
Yeah,
And
she's a world champion.
yeah, so there you go. So what about the typical, somewhat out of shape, not real active adult? I mean, even someone like me, okay, I'm going to use myself as an example, who's never done this, okay, and is thinking to themselves, oh, you know, the concept sounds great, but I mean, what kind of changes takes place when a person starts getting serious about something like this?
Well, and I'll talk to you guys. I really believe that this is the best thing to do for your mental health. And if you take the approach that the process of doing jiu-jitsu is what's going to be beneficial. You're not coming in here to win. You're not coming here to beat the 20-year-old with a neck tattoo, which is very difficult to do. You're coming in here to learn jiu-jitsu, to try something new, to get outside your comfort zone, for all of these mental benefits that come with it. It's a win-win situation. Because just the fact of walking into a room where you don't know anybody and trying something new, you've already taken a huge step that most people can't do.
Sure.
The fact that you're humbling yourself enough to come into something that you're not good at, that mental exercise is tremendously beneficial if you can make that a habit.
Mm.
And then, like the other things I said, being in the moment, learning from your losses, not being so dogmatic in your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
If you sort of understand that this is what it's going to take to stay in the game, for example, I tell folks, do it for 6 months. Whether you love it, whether you hate it, whether you're sore every day, whether your finger hurts, come in 2 days a week for 6 months.
Okay.
Because it's the process of doing something difficult that you may not feel like doing some days. I always tell parents in front of the kids, Mom and Dad, what would Junior's life look like if you and Mom just did whatever you felt like doing whenever it was convenient for you? I said, you know what, Junior? Your life would suck. Mm-hmm. But they're choosing to do difficult things that they don't feel like doing for others' benefit, for your benefit. I said, so even if you don't feel like doing it, if your parents are asking you to do this, you need to suck it up and you need to do what you're told and you need to come here 2 days a week.
I just thought of something when you said that. You know how younger people especially will go, oh, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And what would happen if every time they didn't want to do something, they said, I don't want to do that and didn't do it?
I had this great story. Sitting right there. There was a 12-year-old named Isaiah. Mm-hmm. Came in, bad attitude, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk to me. His parents made him come. And so I'm talking to him, and he wouldn't look at me. And I said, hey, Isaiah. I said, look at me. I said, don't disrespect me on my mat. Mm-hmm. What did I do to you to earn your disrespect? I said, look at me when I'm talking to you. Mm-hmm. He kept looking at his mom. I said, don't look at her, look at me. Mm-hmm. I said, you're 12 years old. I said, everybody works in the system. I said, in your family system, you have a mom and a dad. You're 12 years old. Your job is to do what they tell you to do. Mm-hmm. I said, so they're telling you to do Jiu Jitsu twice a week. You're going to suck it up and you're going to do Jiu Jitsu twice a week. Mm-hmm. He says, but I don't feel like it. I said, here's the problem. We're asking the wrong questions. Mm-hmm. I don't really care how you feel. Whether you're on this mat happy, sad, I don't care. Mm-hmm. What we need from you is we need obedience. We understand what you need. Mm-hmm. How you feel is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. So you need to do things that we ask you to do whether you feel like them or not. And when I was talking, I was saying this to him in front of the parents. Uh-huh. The parents were looking at me like they saw a ghost. Uh-huh. Because it's almost like this very basic concept was revolutionary to them. Like, it doesn't matter how you feel. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we, I use that analogy. I always use these like the children of Israel analogy, like we're taking back the land. Yeah. We need to go take back the land. Yeah. So it really doesn't matter how Johnny feels. Mm-hmm. If this decision is going to honor God and it's going to be good for him, then he needs to obey and do it with a good attitude because it's the right thing to do. Right. So that kid, Isaiah, 2 months in, is a brand new kid. Comes on the mat, does all the warm-ups, has a good attitude. He's fighting. Uh-huh. He holds his shoulders up a little more. He looks you in the eye. Mm-hmm. This was, I saw that kid that day and I'm like, I'm never going to see that kid ever again. Because I laid into him right in front of his mom and dad. Yeah. Because he didn't need a buddy to affirm him. Right. He needed somebody to kick him in the butt and say, look, bro, you're so stuck on how you feel mm-hmm. and it's all about you. This is not about you. Right.
And I'm thinking right now, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about this kid or any kid like that. And I'm thinking, okay, 10 years down the line, not getting that talked to, not being put through that discipline. At 22 years of age, how is he different than going through all this? Totally different individual.
Here's the kids. They get a phone, 10 years old. They're looking at porn. They're playing video games 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Mm-hmm. It's all instant gratification, on demand. Nobody's speaking into their life. They're the king of their own castle, and they're left to their own devices. Right. Gradually, their parents have no more influence on them. They cut out any friend that challenges them, because usually it's a live and let live philosophy. Sure. I'll do me, you do you. Nobody wants to make each other better. Yeah. And at 22, that has disastrous consequences. Mm-hmm. You're smoking weed, hanging out with your buddies, playing video games, a chronic underachiever. Mm-hmm. can't keep a real relationship because it requires commitment and sacrifice,
Right.
the consequences are devastating. So when you take a kid at a younger age when they're still pliable, and you teach them these fundamental concepts like life isn't all about you, it doesn't really matter how you feel, have counsel in your life. Like I always talk about that Bible verse, faithful are the wounds of a friend.
Yeah.
You know, I tell kids what they're doing wrong in jiu-jitsu, not because I want to make fun of them. I tell them that because I want them to succeed.
Yeah.
So when I tell them something they're doing wrong, they can either heed my advice and get better, or they can think that they know everything
Exactly.
and they get smashed.
Right. Now, here's my curiosity. How long are when they're here? About how long are they?
An hour. The kids' classes are an hour. The adult class is about an hour and a half.
So who is it harder to leave the phone alone for an hour, the kid or the adult that's used to having it?
Well, you see a couple things. You see some parents, and the kid could be on the mat on fire, and the mom wouldn't know because she's on her phone.
It's on the phone hold.
You know, and so you kind of see that, and it just is what it is. So now I know that my staff, the volunteers here, we need to step up and be really involved in that kid's life because, you know, maybe the parent is just checked out or too preoccupied.
Okay.
I guess it's everybody. I mean, the phone is real prevalent with everybody.
Sure.
And there's an interesting thing with jiu-jitsu because you see who somebody is by how they roll. They talk about golfing with people in business because are they considerate? Are they trustworthy? Are they on time? These things in golf, you see it in the game.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is that times 1,000% because you're rolling with them. So if you see somebody's impulsive, if you see somebody is selfish, if you see somebody's very prideful, there's false humility, all of that comes out in the roll.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the thing with the phones and just not living in reality, it's a human problem, not necessarily a generational problem. But you normally see it before you see the phone. You see it in their role.
Yeah.
If somebody's chronically insecure or just, I'll give you an example. Some people only try hard when they're winning. Once they start losing, they roll over and die.
Well, I've seen that a lot.
They have no gumption. They have no grit.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them, you see this a lot in boys that come from single mom households. They have a lot of bravado, but once their initial push is over, they have no second wind. They just roll over and die. They have no staying power.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is, I think, a direct correlation of there's not a dad in the house pushing them past their comfort zone, which is what this process will do.
Nice. So let's talk really briefly here. Vision for the future. I know you're talking possibly some expansion that God is setting up. What's the sense of where he's leading you on all this?
So my conviction is any door that God opens up, prayerfully with counsel, I'm going to step through it. And it's been a crazy ride. So we started planning in 2021. We opened in 2022. As we sit here today, we have about 230 something students.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
We have possible plans for a second location. Like I said, we're teaching in a charter school.
Okay.
Jiu-Jitsu as a regular class in their school day.
Okay.
We're at Belvedere Park, and we have plans to go to other parks. So again, we're going to places where they're not going to come into this academy, so we're going to them.
Okay.
We have 2 staff right now, and we're bringing on a 3rd in December. And it's just, we've had Channel 7 cover us, and we have Univision, which is the biggest Spanish-speaking TV station that wants to come and do an interview with us, which should make everything go gangbusters.
Absolutely.
So I see God's favor on us, but there's a couple non-negotiables with me. One is, since I see this as a work of God, I don't want to put my hands all over it and mess it up. So I have to hold on to it lightly. I can't sacrifice my own walk with the Lord, the quality of me being a husband or a father. So even though I want to work on this thing 24/7, I just can't.
Right.
So I'm trying my best to manage all of the doors that God's opening without trying to make it happen. Because, you're a businessman.
Sure.
I spent decades in business making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, if it's not happening, I just have to work harder. I just have to be smarter about it. And in this situation, I realized that would be the absolute wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting back prayerfully, but God is really opening the doors in a miraculous way. So that's my commitment is as God opens the door, I'm going to step through it. Character really matters to me.
Yeah.
So I just can't have 50 people that I don't know on our mats.
Sure.
Another interesting thing, though, is I kind of wrestled with this idea of who do we have on our mats. And what I realized is the word Christian, I would gladly share the mats with some people that are not Christians.
Okay.
And I would not want to share the mats with some people that have 10 bumper stickers on their car. Mm. So for me, it's not so much about if somebody says they're Christian. It's about looking at their life and saying, is this a good role model for these kids?
Yeah.
Are they trustworthy? Do they share the same values that I do? Not just in what they do or say, but in actually who they are. So that's my position on that. I think it's when we have a bunch of folks on this mat. We've had a judge on this mat that's come from the foster care system. We have many business leaders, community leaders. We've had the captain of the sheriff's department. We've had politicians on this mat. We've had missionaries on this mat. Mm-hmm. In addition to all the Jiu Jitsu community.
Right.
So I think it's showing the kids what success looks like on every metric, whether it is spiritual, in business, integrity as a person, on all those fronts.
Sounds great. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I do have one last question for you, though, that I want to throw out there. Because, like I mentioned earlier, we have no idea who's going to watch this, when they're going to watch it. But God uses things and opens doors, like you're saying, to reach people at different times. So somebody might be watching this right now because they're interested in Jiu Jitsu, okay? But they've also heard about faith, and maybe they're searching right now. They don't have it. They don't know who they are. They can't find any of that peace at last. That's something that you do have in life. So as the Spirit would lead you in some way, what would you want to tell them about the value of finding that in their life and how it would change it?
Yeah, so what I would say is, in 2023, where there's so much misinformation, being a Christian is as simple as a relationship with Jesus Christ. And it's really surrendering your plan for your life, exchanging your plan for your life for his plan for your life. And the beautiful thing about it, even though you don't really know what his plan is for your life, you trust him. Think about the person in your life you trust the most. Your mom, for example. Even if you didn't know all the details, you would trust that she had your best interest in mind. So even if you didn't know the details of the plan, she says, we're going somewhere, you trust her. I think this is when you choose to become a Christian. You're basically saying, I have this plan for my life. Probably it's not really working out. I'm going to exchange that plan for the plan that God has for my life. So you accept him as your Lord and Savior. Other than that, all these other things that you've heard about, all these rules, what to do, what not to do, I'll give you the same advice I tell my kids. As long as it honors God, go and do it. Go big, because if you fail, you're not saved by all your fancy works or how great you are. You're saved by the grace of God. It's not what you do, but what he's done for you. It's the grace of God. So I would say give it a try. I would say don't focus so much on all the things you're going to do. Focus on who you want to be. And if your primary identity in being is as a child of God, you're forgiven by God, you're redeemed by God, you accept his grace, you rest in his grace, it's a really awesome way to live life because now you're not performing. Now you don't have to make everybody happy. Now you're not keeping up with the Joneses. Everybody's opinion really doesn't matter. It's a very freeing way to live life, and a life of faith. As you can see by our conversation, it's not the most comfortable thing. It's a little bit scary, but it's super awesome. It's really exciting. You wake up every day and you're like, I wonder what's going to happen today. And if what you thought was going to happen today didn't happen, it's okay. You're all right. So the measurement that I use to measure what a successful day is, what a successful week looks like, it's peace. It's not productivity. It's not results. It's not what everybody else thinks. It's peace. If I wake up in the morning and I have God's peace, and I go to bed at night and I have God's peace, we're good.
Amen. And that's what a lot of people, possibly you, who's listening to this right now, is lacking. You might be busy, but the one thing you don't have is peace. So that was really well said. Ron, we appreciate your time today. Let me ask you this. If somebody wants to find out more about getting involved here, maybe participating here, getting in some classes, or maybe they just want to support it, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can look us up on Instagram at East_LA_Jiu-Jitsu, East LA Jiu-Jitsu. You can look us up at eastlajiu-jitsu.org. You can look up our phone number and give us a call. I don't remember it off the top of my head because it's a Google number. I'm always happy to talk to you guys about anything, even about anything on this conversation. You know, I really feel like ministry is a relationship. So anybody that wants to have a relationship with me, I want to have one with them. I would come and try out a class. If you're in the LA area, I would come and try out a class. If you're interested in donating, we are a registered 501c3, so all your donations are tax deductible. In addition to money, if you, for example, I want to take 40 kids to the snow this winter. If I knew somebody that knew somebody at Snow Summit that can get us discounted or comp tickets, that's much better than me going up to the window and buying snowboard lessons for 40 kids. So there's always somebody that knows somebody. I want to give these kids experiences in life. We just took 20-something kids to do archery the other day because somebody had a connection. So whether you make pizza, whether you own a ski resort or anywhere in between, I want to bless these kids. I want to give them experiences, show them what success looks like, get them outside their comfort zone, and have them live their life. So if you can provide any of that, I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Amen. So I know that as God opens up doors, as you mentioned, opening up doors, there's somebody out there, maybe multiple people out there that can fulfill some of those opportunities. So whatever it is, reach out. I highly recommend Ron and everything that he's doing here, and you definitely will not be disappointed in what you find. So thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you share this podcast with other people. If you have not subscribed, make sure to do that as well. And we look forward to also sharing future episodes with you. This has been the Audacious Faith Podcast. Go out there and live a life of audacity that God has called you to, and we will see you next time. God bless.